One of the main things I like about the new Voicemeeter is the advanced channel processing that it now has. Remember the old processing? Well, I do. And, well, I hated it. It got a job done, but it wasn't really any good by any stretch. Whether it came down to the compression or the gate, both were easy to operate, but the end result left little to be desired for any sound quality. And who actually knew what they were affecting by tuning those knobs up anyway? I know I didn't, but I did know that if you went too far, you ended up with a mess. Thankfully, today's banana and potato allow you to do program changes to compression and gate while also adding a parametric EQ and a denoiser with preset voice effects for each channel. In today's video, I'm going to go through a walkthrough of adjusting these while tuning my own microphone right here using Voicemeeter Potato. So, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing I think we really need to talk about is our gain and where I've had my gain set, and where I think you should try to target your gain. So if you're looking on Voicemeeter, if you're looking at the meter, as you see here, I'm hitting about 3 or 4 LEDs into the green, and that's kind of where you want to target. If you were looking at a DBFS meter like in OBS, for instance, I am looking at about peaking at about minus 10 dB. Somewhere between minus 18 and minus 10 is usually good. So this is about where it would also be here inside of Voicemeeter, and that's with my slider at 0 dB. Now, I recommend you put your slider at 0 dB, and then you adjust the gain on your interface, or if you're using a USB, you'll have the gain knob up here that you can then use to adjust the gain. You can also use the Windows volume slider inside of Windows. Most of the time, that's what this does if you're on USB, if it's using the Windows. Some mics have a dedicated preamp built into it, but most of them are pretty standard that way. But that's kind of where you want to target your gain. And this is going to set you up because gain really is the most important, I think, aspect in making sure that your sound quality is good, along with obviously mic placement. So you want to definitely have those two things right before you go and do anything else as far as processing and Voicemeeter. But as long as you're, within, say 2 to 6 inches of the capsule in the microphone, you're speaking into the microphone, you're addressing it in the right manner, such as this microphone here is a front address microphone. A lot of condenser microphones are side address microphones. So you just need to make sure that you're talking in the right direction, getting the best sound out of it, and having the proper gain set so that when you go and start doing other processing, you won't introduce any extra noise and it'll sound nice and crisp and clear. All right, so now that we have gain set properly and we're happy with that, now what we can do is we can start playing with the processing. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is EQ. Now, you did have this kind of weird EQ thing that you could kind of do here originally, but now we have parametric EQ built into each channel, which is really nice. Used to, you only had it for your buses down here, but now we have it for all of your fader inputs, which is really good. So I like using this for tweaking my microphone. So here we can turn this on by left clicking on it. It should turn the cyan blue color. And then to access the UI, you can right click on it. Now I have a high pass or a low cut. If you hear somebody say low cut or you hear them say high pass, those are interchangeable. They mean the exact same thing. And this is just the shape of this where it drops off on this slope on the low end and it increases once you get up in frequency. And what that's doing is that's cutting out any of this super low boxy kind of noise that you don't want in your microphone. Maybe some super low end rumble, say if you have a car or something in the distance that's passing, on a road, if you're say in an apartment or something like that. There are some people that do have that issue. So this is what a high pass does. It cuts all that stuff out, but it does clean your vocal up. It doesn't make it sound super bassy sounding. So I definitely recommend at a minimum to run a high pass filter. Now I do like to have mine up a little bit higher, between 60 and 70 dB or 70 hertz works fine. And for this one, the slope is already there enough in the default. I really can't change it that much anyway. So that is good. Now, maybe that's a downfall for some people. Some people like to add a little bit of a steeper slope. and other EQs do allow you to do that. But this one should be perfectly fine for most people, especially if you're doing something like YouTube. And in the next one, we have a couple different band frequencies that we can use to cut or boost as necessary. But I like to use these to cut out any weird frequencies for my vocal. And for me, I'm typically pretty bad around 500, between 500 and 530 hertz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the frequency here. The band is already on. You can turn these on and off if you don't want to use them. They are all on by default. Now what I've got this 475. I'm going to increase this right around 530. And then I'm going to increase the dB up to about plus 12. Now you should be hearing right now kind of this boxy, not boxy, but more of like a honky kind of sound. It sounds like you're speaking right through your hand or right through like a toilet paper roll or something like that. It's really honky sounding or boxy. I don't like it. And this is really something that you can use to really clean your vocal up. And so what I like to do is then instead of having this up to plus 12, I like to lower this between -3 and -6 dB, or you can be really aggressive if you have a serious problem with it. And you can adjust the Q here to widen or narrow the bandwidth of that frequency spike that you see. Typically for something like this, you want it to be pretty narrow because you don't want to take out any frequencies that give your microphone nice warmth, especially as you get up into these mids right here, where this is where your fundamental vocal frequencies are at. So you just want to get rid of some of this boxy sound that you're not really wanting in your vocal. The good thing about YouTube vocals, or if you're doing something like a voiceover, and you're just doing like a podcast, you don't really need to do a whole lot. As long as your gain is set right and your mic placement is good and you have a decent microphone, it should sound really good. So you should only have to maybe cut 1 or 2 of these at the most, especially if you're in a room that's fairly treated, doesn't have a lot of reverb. Now, if you're in a room with a lot of reverb, say if you're in the kitchen and you're recording something, I don't know, a cooking stream or something like that, then obviously there's a lot more that you're going to probably need to do to try to find some of those more offensive frequencies that you're getting from reverb and that sort of thing. And you could do the same thing by just hunting them out with one of these and just searching for them. By going up and down in the frequency here and finding where it sounds bad and then just cutting those out as needed. About the only other thing I like to do, and this is also microphone dependent, this is a dynamic microphone. It's not a condenser. So typically once you get above 10K, you start to really have a lot of drop off in the frequency and you lose some of that high end sparkle that you'd like in a vocal. So here you can, use a high shelf, which is what I have selected here. And I typically like to get around between 10, say 12K, and then just increase this a couple dB. And so what you're going to see is it's going to increase this band of frequency and pretty much keep it high up to 20 kilohertz using this shelf here. And you don't need to be real aggressive with this. A couple dB at the most. You don't need a whole lot. If you start getting above here, it really starts to me kind of starts sounding weird. But so I like it to just, be maybe, up to about 3 dB at the most. This is great for dynamic microphones. For condenser microphones, you may not even need to do this because condenser microphones are already bright up in the upper end. They sound more natural. They got a lot more sparkle up in the high end like that. So this may be not necessary if you have a condenser microphone. It's something you're just going to have to listen to right here. Okay. So that is typically all I would do for my vocal from my EQ. All right. Next, compression. So the old compressor that we had in Voicemeeter was this single knob that was basically a fixed 4-to-1 ratio compressor that had auto makeup gain in it. And I thought that the makeup gain was really aggressive in it, and it caused a lot of extra background noise because it really brought that gain up really high. So the new compressor, if you want to access that, now all you do is put your little mouse cursor on the compressor to gate, and then you right-click on it. When you right-click on it, now you have access to specific processing parameters for each of these functions. And for your compressor, I typically like to set a ratio. Now, this ratio is the amount of compression that you're going to see once it reaches above the threshold that you have set. So let me go ahead and I'm going to set my threshold. I'm going to put it somewhere around about -24 to start out. And you can see this little
square that moved up this line, that is your threshold. So the ratio I'm going to set, and let's go about 3 to 1, anywhere from about 2 to 4 dB for a ratio works pretty well for most people for a typical vocal like this. Much above 4 dB gets a little aggressive. If you want that kind of FM broadcaster kind of sound, then yes, you could probably use a little bit of a stiffer ratio to do that. But typically for a vocal like this, for podcasts, for YouTube, or even for your live streams on Twitch, a ratio of between 2 to 4 should work fine. Most people say around 3 to 4, and I like mine to be around 3.5. So now for the threshold, you got that. Now the threshold, you want to look, and what you want to do is you want to adjust the threshold. Now you're already seeing me have a little bit of compression here, maybe about a dB at the most, where it's catching some of those spikes. You want to be somewhere between, I would say, consistently compressing around 2 to 3 dB, but you want those spikes to be compressed, I would say, no more than about 6. So you need to adjust your threshold accordingly. So here I'm going to lower the threshold and then look at this bar here and also listen to it too. That's important also, because if you get too compressed, then you can kind of have this kind of like surging, thumpy kind of sound that it could cause. But this is typically about a good ratio, right? This is a good compression. Typically, I would say about 2 to 3 dB, but when I have those heavy plosives or something where it sends a lot of SPL into the capsule of the microphone, it's going to really clamp down on it and compress it about 6 dB. So if you're seeing something like this in Voicemeeter, where this little red bar is typically about where mine is, then you're probably pretty good with the settings. Now your attack time, if you want the compressor to activate quicker, then you need to lower your attack time. Most people, for a vocal like this, you do want a pretty quick attack time, and you want a release that's between, I would say, 50 to 100 milliseconds at the most. So, anywhere in there should work pretty good. You don't want the release time to be super long because you want the compression to deactivate and your vocals sound nice and normal. Now, the second thing here, and you've probably heard, the auto makeup has actually probably kicked in pretty good because it's on by default. But listen to what happens when I turn it off. So now the auto makeup is off, and I bet a lot of that background noise kind of went away, a lot of that staticky kind of stuff. What we were doing here is it was adding that auto makeup gain, and it wasn't really telling you how much it was doing, but I think it was probably pretty aggressive. But here, if I look at probably my average compression is between 2 to 3 dB, I want to make my output gain or my makeup gain to match that. So I'm going to add about 3 dB to make a makeup gain. What that does for compressor, obviously it's catching those peaks and lowering those. But at the same time, when you add makeup gain, it brings the overall volume up. And that gives you a nice listening level for your viewers. So when your viewers are watching on whatever device or whatever, audio device they're listening to or watching on, say for, TV or mobile device or your PC, for instance, whatever, it gives them a nice band of volume or a signal that they can have a nice listening audio. They don't have to keep changing the volume all the time, and it's really nice. Vocal compression is a secret to sounding pro. Let's do this. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Checking 1 2 3 4 5 6. Without compression, especially if you're really dynamic in your vocal, then they may need to adjust volume constantly to adjust so that they're not getting blown out. But that's what compression is there for, is to give you that nice band of volume that maintains consistency so that your viewers don't have to change it. So there you go. I like compression, and I definitely recommend everybody run compression on their vocal. All right, the next thing is a gate. Now, gate has a lot of the same settings as a compressor, and we're going to really look at a few of these. We're not going to deal with any side chaining. You don't need to side chain this. But for things like threshold, we're going to look at threshold and how that needs to be set, because it's very important. Because the gate typically, if it's set wrong, can end up cutting off the front end of your vocal or chopping off the back end of your vocal, depending on how you have it set. The good thing about here in Voicemeeter is your threshold matches pretty much where your bar, your dB level here. So where I'm at right now at about a -46, if this blue bar were to go below that, this typically would be about where -46 or -47 would be at. So it just kind of gives, it is a scaled together, so you can kind of figure that out. Well, what you would need to do, if you had background noise, or say if you wanted to try to cut out key clicks or mouse clicks, then you would need to stop talking and then produce whatever's going to be the noise that you want to try to keep out of your microphone. So I'm going to quit talking and I'm going to start clicking on my mouse. So about right where my mouse cursor is right now is about where I want to be at. So I'm going to move this up to about right there. That's about -54 dB where that is. So now what I want to do is I want to actually go about 5 dB over that. So here I'm going to try to target about -49 dB. All right, so that would be where my gate would be set at. So now what happens with my attack time being set at 10 milliseconds and my release time being 1200 milliseconds, what this is going to do is it's going to really activate quickly. So when my vocal goes above the threshold of -49, it's going to quickly open. And that's going to allow me to speak. And that's going to then open my microphone signal up so that you're actually hearing the microphone. When it's below the threshold, it's like a gate that is shut and it's not allowing any signal through it at all. And that's what a gate is. It's either open or shut. There's no happy in between. But here I have the attack time set to 10 milliseconds. That's perfectly fine. The hold time is about 200 milliseconds, which is when I quit talking, it's going to hold for about 200 milliseconds. And then once it gets below that threshold, it's really going to clamp down. And you'll see that by this red bar as it activates as I quit talking. And that's what a gate does. Now, for the release time being 1250 milliseconds, that's really high up there. That's really long. But what that's doing is that is allowing you to speak. And then when you get done speaking, you're still going to have signal coming through your microphone, and it's not going to chop off the end of your vocal. If I were to, decrease this, release time to say something ridiculous like 174, then when I quit talking, then, this gate might end up, maybe chopping a little bit of my vocal off, or it may even when I'm talking and I take a breath, the gate activates because it's releasing so quickly. So that's why you want to increase this up there and have this up there so that it's not getting chopped off. All right, the last thing I want to show you is the denoiser. Obviously, right-click on the denoiser, and that will open this up. The denoiser is a single slider, and I haven't really seen how it really works that well, to be honest with you. And I need to read up on it a little bit more to describe what it does. But I don't personally use it. I would actually recommend, if you have something that you need to have denoise, I would recommend another way, which I will talk about in a second. But I also wanted to show you that you have a voice modeler here, and including up to 8 presets that they've already added in here where you can activate these and it will change your vocal
based on these presets. And you can add
these around, and these are also bindable by key. So you can have these set, as a key bind, or if you use Stream Deck or whatever, you can set these as a key bind to activate when you're in your live stream, which is really nice.
And you can, make your own, which is really cool too. And you can also adjust the dry mix to wet mix. For instance, here it was already at 100%. But if you wanted to mix in some of your dry vocal, you just bring this down, and mix it in. And you'll get a mixture of your dry, normal microphone sound compared to the wet, processed voice effect sound. But yeah, and same applies here. You just double click on these, and these will reset to normal. for default if you need that. But that's all the presets, and that is it. That is the Voicemeeter processing in a nutshell, and it works really good, and I like it a lot. So if you are interested in trying this, go download Voicemeeter yourself. I really like this now because you can truly tweak and tune your microphone inside a Voicemeeter where you just could kind of do it before and it would sound okay, but there was still a lot of issues in my opinion. Now you have discrete control of compression, EQ, and gate, which is really nice. Now, before I get into the outro of this, what I was talking about with noise suppression, say for instance, you have, just this constant background noise like CPU fans or AC, something like that, that's just going to be constantly running at a steady level, and it's typically not dynamic in nature. OBS, for instance, has noise suppression built into it that really does a good job at cleaning that up. And I'm talking specifically about the RN noise filter built into OBS that you can add to your vocals. So let me switch back over to the display and let me move OBS over here. And here you can go to filters on your mic and you can add noise suppression. And you can also add limiting if you want to. These are two options that I definitely recommend that you use. But RN noise is a really nice noise suppression that does not destroy your vocal like the old style noise suppressors had. And I use RN noise on my vocal all the time, and I really like it. It does a great job for, like this, I said, those steady state, really non-dynamic background noise sources like AC noise or fans, that sort of thing. If you have a lot of beating and dynamic noise that's going around, then something like the NVIDIA Broadcast AI noise suppression will probably work okay. But then again, if it's really loud and it has to do a lot to try to get rid of it, it's really going to hurt your vocal. But for that low, just general background noise, RN noise is the way to go. And you can use that in a couple ways. OBS has it built in. There's also VST plugins, for instance, Elgato's noise removal plugin that you can download, a VST3 plugin. That is the RN noise plugin, so that's free. RN noise actually makes their own version of it that you can download. It's kind of an old school. I definitely recommend just getting the Elgato one. It's easy, it's free, it's updated, and it works well for most people. But you would have to add that inside of your broadcast software, your recording software, if it has the ability to use VSTs, that sort of thing. And that would be outside of Voicemeeter. Now, for limiting is a little different because limiting, you actually do have a limiter now built into each of these faders. So if I right click here, I'm going to type in the number 2. And what that does is this adds this limiter. This is a brick wall limiter. So there will be no sound that goes above 2 plus 2 dB right now where it's set. And you can left click and drag this down and set this, and I'm set this to minus 3 dB. So I want to make sure that I do not clip my vocal in this, and this is going to help with that if you have this. Now, if you're talking with people on Discord and you have a Discord channel, such as this chat channel I have here, then you could do the same thing and set a limiter here, because you never know who you're going to get on Discord. You never know what their microphone is going to be set, and their gain could be super heavy, super loud, and this will provide that limiting for them as you're speaking, and you don't get blown out. And you could also compress them so that you can keep them at a nice steady range of volume too. So that's just another option for you also. So those are different ways that you can use the processing inside of Voicemeeter now to tune your mic and or also control things like your chat or music. If you wanted to EQ music, say you're a bass head and you want to add a lot of bass, then you can do that. And say for instance, I want to add this shelf here, and I can add a lot of bass on the low end if I wanted to do that. So there's options now in Voicemeeter that's really nice, and I like that a lot. It's really cool. So if you got any questions about anything, please drop a comment down below. I'll try to answer them best as I can. But if you do have any questions, yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. I also do have a Discord. I'll provide a link in the description that you can join my Discord community. And we have a host of Voicemeeter professionals there that are active and will discuss and talk and try to answer any questions that you may have. Also, if you are interested in a dual PC setup using Voicemeeter, I will have a video out in a couple weeks. So you need to subscribe, click the like, hit that bell for notifications. You'll know when I have that video that goes live, and you'll be notified of it. So if you're interested in more Voicemeeter, meter type tutorials, then this is the place you want to be. These are the best tutorials on the internet. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from my loyal followers and the TFS community that loves the videos and has used Voicemeeter and continue to come back to watch the tutorials. Everybody, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your support. Y'all have a great rest of your week. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.